Why don't we bring the meeting to order? Start by approving the minutes from our last building committee meeting on February 10th. So,
motion to approve as presented, the final version that would be.
Yeah.
I didn't even bother looking at the first three.
There you go.
figured to get them straight eventually.
That's right.
Second. Thank you. Has anybody any changes to make to the minutes? Any corrections? Hearing none, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Thank you. I think maybe the first thing we should discuss this evening, sorry to everyone, is the septic issue. We have a number in the cost estimate right now, which would be for a septic system, which is at $1.5 million, I think.
For treatment.
Treatment, right. That would be if we did a treatment plan. What Wade, the town engineer who's been doing work up there, is telling us is that he's pretty sure he can do a system for about $400,000. But that would be dependent upon the DEP allowing us to do that. Hope I'm phrasing this properly. DEEP, okay, because we were going to rely on that. So I think we as a committee have to make a decision as to what number we should put in this cost estimate right now. We're being advised by Bob Lynn from Gilbane to stick with the higher number because you don't know who's going to be at the DEP in a year from now when we do it. Wade is fairly certain that he's going to be able to do the septic system for the $400,000. That's all I have to say on the matter. We can start discussing that and see what we want to do, and we should probably take a vote on how we want to do that.
Well, if we get more information from Wade, though, couldn't we have a more definite answer?
Like 11th hour kind of thing?
I don't know what the timeline is, Jerry, compared to the time.
But you're saying a year from now, it could, someone could come in.
The problem is that he's not going to get a binding judgment.
Right, okay.
He's going to get an opinion.
Up to the point of referendum. And then after that, you're saying...
Until the day we make the formal application for a permit.
So we're talking.
Oh, you're getting a
right.
judgment.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks good. Yeah,
Right.
sure, we should be able to do
Right.
that's.
So what you're saying, David, is that's something that we probably don't know for certain until a year from now.
Correct.
Right.
It's a little like going to the building inspector, showing him a set of drawings, having him glance at it and say, yeah, this looks pretty good. And then you come in for a building permit and he spends 2 weeks looking at the drawings carefully and finds things he has issues with.
I'm 100%, well, at this point, unless you guys can convince me otherwise, I'm putting a higher number in. I want to put the higher number in for the same reason we don't want to renovate, is that I'd rather err on the high side, ask for the money, and not have to go back later. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I think I always wanted to be honest about this with the public, and you know, I was never afraid of a high number. Let's go before the town and say this is a possibility, because it might be. And the worst case scenario is to go a year from now and have to ask for another $1 million. That's the worst case scenario. I'd rather avoid the worst case scenario.
I agree.
I agree also. Barring perhaps nitrate tests and other things coming in conclusively to say, based on all criteria and data, you don't have to do this, which is frankly unlikely. I think we have to do that.
I don't think it's a major grant.
I don't like it.
Yeah, I know, we all want to see a small number, but I'd rather have the right number than the small number.
John thinks we're going to get away with the $400,000.
I think he's right, but
Would it be nice to have extra money at the end of it?
no.
Well, no, you have to
Well,
construction,
not having
that
I
would
would
be
put it that way.
Yeah.
overnight, but whatever.
That's a big chunk of your construction
Yeah.
you see on one line.
Yeah.
I don't think we need to vote, just a consensus.
Dennis?
I agree.
You agree? Okay.
Yeah.
So we don't do anything with the cost estimate, we leave it the way it is, because that amount is in the cost estimate already. Okay. I think that was, is there anything else with the cost estimate that we had to discuss? We have to talk a little bit about the maintenance facility. And what kind of a number we want to put in for that. I think it's something that, as far as the location of it, can be decided at a later date. But we have to put a number in the cost estimate for replacing that facility.
What's the exact size of this, Jerry? Or what goes in there?
I was gonna ask the same question, I'm really not familiar with what you mean.
Why couldn't it be a deed, I mean?
Well, again, that's a discussion that I think we should have, as a town should have, not our building committee. But, I mean, I think we have to put a number in for a building. How many square feet are we talking about, Jack?
I think they're currently use up 800, no,
7,000, I thought it was.
8,000 square feet, and we're looking at a 5,000 square foot replacement space, is that?
Does that sound right to you, Dave?
Yeah.
We had 5,500 square feet in there for the new building on the
Right.
assumption that we would have some efficiencies in there and that, you know.
What's actually in
You're
it?
saying you're using they use 8,000?
Currently, the space that they consume is about 8,000 square feet, and
That's
that's,
basement or mortgage?
I'm sorry?
Right, it consists of a garage, the separate garage where some maintenance facilities are parked, there's another garage, so to speak, or at least some indoor space with some big overhead doors, and they drive vehicles, and there's some servicing of the vehicles done there. There's a plan room, there are a couple of offices where Cozy is and his colleagues. Then in this same building, sort of a separate function, is the technology hub for the town. Happens to be in as well.
We can take that out of the
that's
equation.
a,
So it's 5,000 square feet.
The technology hub?
No, that's
No,
not.
that's small.
Yeah, it's small, it's relatively small.
but the key concept is that they need to have essentially two, maybe three, but two areas that they can park vehicles, park the two maintenance vehicles. Both are equipped, or will have the ability to be equipped with sanders, so they can be able to be pulled in out of the weather and maintained office space and part storage. And that's essentially what it comes down to. But we don't need the fully, I mean, I think the reality is that we recognize that if we're gonna do a new facility, that was an existing space that was.
Doesn't Public Works do the sanding, plowing, mowing, all that stuff?
No, we contract out we contract out major plowing for the facilities, but we have two trucks that have the capacity to do the initial opening up of facilities and keep things going when the contracted services are available, or before they get there.
Including that big garage by where the locker, the football locker room?
Correct. That's part of that 8,000.
Plus, that's part of that 8,000.
And
Sound?
the technology part is not going to be
Yeah,
included
that's
with that
separate.
then?
I don't think we can include that. That would certainly be irrelevant to the
So where's that
maintenance
going?
section. That's
Technology,
probably
I
in the high
thought, was
school.
already in the school.
We have established something. It's
Does he know
not
that?
big.
Well, it's a small amount of square footage, but there's no room with that name on it in the plan as we
Well, I
talked
think
about.
that was discussed at one point, and we
I
agreed
thought
there
so,
would
too.
be, yeah.
I agree.
Well, there's a room with storage on it.
It's
The cave
it's
is-
probably 500 square feet, so it's
Yeah,
kind of
very
very marginal
small.
error. But, and I'm happy to include it as a space with a label on it on the plans if you like. Our thought initially was that and the maintenance facility were things you don't need the quality of construction that you would for the school, and that they could be set aside in a separate pre-engineered steel building, relatively inexpensive. But it's such a small amount of square footage, you can kind of go either way.
I remember that being the original discussion, and for a long time, our concept. But if I remember correctly, about a month or so ago, we more or less agreed that, if I'm wrong, Jack, that we were gonna put the bunker, as they called it,
Okay.
in the school.
Yeah.
I thought we came to that decision that somewhere along the line,
Certainly from,
Combination of security.
because it is a small,
Yeah.
it's relatively small.
Okay, well, we'll show it.
Do you remember, Dennis? You got a great memory. How big is DPW building?
How big is it?
Yeah. It's not that old, we built the thing. It's square feet.
One up at Peters?
No,
No,
Public Works. So we just.
Oh, the one you just built up at, I have no idea.
I don't
I
either.
wasn't involved in that one.
5,000 square feet of building is fine.
But I know someone just mentioned the other day that we could almost replicate the one that's at Peters, that has the metal storage building that Public Works uses. At the Peters complex, it holds 2 or 3 vehicles easily. It's, I mean, I heard people talking the other night, as after the last meeting, we were leaving the room, and said that they thought the price of $1 million was very excessive to have.
I think we have to figure out a number. I think the discussion as to where it actually goes is
Right.
a discussion that we can have at a later date. It
Exactly.
has to be between Board of Education and probably some town officials to decide what we're gonna do with it. But I think we have to put a number in this cost estimate for some sort of facility. And,
This comes out to $235 a square foot. Does that seem?
Per maintenance.
That's the 1.3 divided by 55.
And we were talking about Butler building, right?
Yeah,
Right.
well, that was for,
It's pretty nice.
no, what that price was for though was
That
a
was our
nicer looking building that
That was
was
one-
part of the design of the school building, so it was right opposite the
Yeah, I
school.
think we're
So-
serving sort of a different concept at that time, and it was
Right.
seen as having sort of dual use and supporting your auto shop program and that kind of thing. So since then, the site plan I showed you last week exported that to a more remote place on the site, and I absolutely agree, I mean, quite a bit. So, yeah.
So,
Do keep in mind, these are,
You build these things.
We try to do it for 150. Less.
construction costs, right, so that, this is a project cost, and again, if you segregate it from this project,
Or
you
you have it on the bottom.
you do a pre-engineered building, you don't have architect's fees and least in the same way, and, you know, you deal all the soft costs in a completely different fashion, it's executed entirely differently, and yeah, you can think about it quite differently. Like $150 a square foot as a project cost would be.
Right, I'm just saying construction
Yeah.
cost, the municipal building took it over.
right.
So, I mean,
Still
the
have-
question becomes,
175 is 9.
great, from my viewpoint, it still looks pretty stiff. Do we need 5,000 square feet?
Let me-
That's a decision we gotta.
Well, they did, to answer that question, Mike Cozy, who's the director of maintenance, was asked to, you know, that exact question, what space he needs, and he went from, like you said, we're in a 8,000 to 9,000 square foot area right now, and he got down to like 5,500 square feet, so maybe he can shave more off of that, I don't know, we haven't put his feet to the fire yet, but I mean, I think that's a close enough estimate for us right now.
It's pretty big. It's 55 by 100, it's pretty big.
Yeah, considering if you only said 3 bays, you have to do more bays than 3 bays.
Pretty good size.
Well, 3 bays, and frankly, a lot of those buildings are designed to have potential for second floor offices.
Again, that 5,500 included, you know, some square footage devoted to the technology hub. So if we're gonna put that into the school, 5,000, 4,500, something like that, you know, you chip away at it.
Well, let me just ask you one question for you. This whole process, we kind of want an apples to apples move, like we want all the functionality of the building we have now. And you mentioned the word efficiency, in shrinking this down. I think we've all learned, if anybody's paid attention to this process, that when you shrink the building but you make it efficient, you can create more functionality. In the maintenance thing, I get the sense it's more wide open spaces. Do you really think there are a lot of efficiencies that we can do to cut down that square footage and really have an 8,000 to a 5,000?
Well, there's never been any program in the facility, like, it wasn't part of anybody's charge to go
Nobody's looking.
interview some, discuss all their programs, understand what their processes are. And so there's kind of no way for me to answer that. It's not like it's been designed, and we're looking at a design and say, gee, if we cut some fat out and make it smaller. No, it's never been designed. This is an allowance for square footage.
But it's fairly just an open space with garage doors.
Mostly,
A couple.
a couple offices and the storage place for the plan room function.
I happen to know from recently we were involved with Project Maps, and they built a new facility there, has several bays. To understand that it was $500,000. That would be,
Heated?
parts of it.
I mean, you're gonna have to, if it's on the property that we're looking at for the school, and it's on, say, the backside of the property, or trying to hide it somewhere because we don't want to make it a nice looking building, you're gonna have to bring utilities to that building. Heat or electricity, water, maybe gas, I mean, that's a cost associated with it.
Jerry, I know that Mr. Belcher's been more than used by our committee, but it just seems to me that with all we have quite a few industrial parks in Clinton, and quite a few, like, a lot of empty buildings going on now, in the right zoning kind of places. It just seems like maybe we should explore the avenue of, is there some space open where something's going out that we can use without having to, I know it doesn't put a number on this tonight, but it's something to look at maybe.
Something to look at in the future, like I said, there's a lot
I mean,
of
there's a lot of
options
big buildings
for
out there
maintenance
that are
department.
empty.
You mean
That's true, but
off-site,
having
off-site
guys
from the
on
school?
site is huge.
I would be against saying that you're gonna have the maintenance facility off-site from the school. Quite frankly, I mean,
Jack, can you speak to that? I've been foggy on that point. Is it
it just a Morgan thing, or is it maintenance for,
It's made for the whole district.
so?
The reality is, I think it would depend more on the proximity to the facility. I mean, if you put it at the other end of town, or, in Madison, it probably wouldn't work so well.
Yeah.
But I don't think that it necessarily has to be on a school property, necessarily. Would it be, ideal, or is it beneficial to have it associated with one or more of the schools? And if we're looking at a campus operation between Joel and Morgan, it would make sense to have it located in where it's close proximity to two out of the 4 facilities. But the reality is they travel to 3 out of 4 currently when they're doing maintenance related jobs. So could it be someplace else? Sure.
Okay. Somebody want to throw a number out that we should include in this cost estimate? Because we gotta include something.
750.
What's that?
That's the one that's really,
What's that?
what's that, 5,000, 150, or?
750?
Well, it's somewhere between 150 and 1.2 million, and we think that's on the high side.
I think 750 is
Middle,
on the high side.
so it's
Yeah, I
conservative.
can't imagine we can't build the Cadillac of maintenance buildings for 750,
You could do the Cadillac.
or probably 5, for instance.
So do you think 5 is a totally conservative, absolutely out of control?
Conservative.
Yeah.
For
All right, then how do you feel about 5?
steel.
No,
Okay, totally conservative.
Oftentimes, there seems to be a diversity of how the word conservative.
Okay.
There's no question in your mind with 5, you couldn't build a mighty fine building. That's a liberal, depending on how you look
Yeah,
at it.
right.
I mean, he's using a safe number, let's use that term.
I would be comfortable with
Conservatively high.
That's what I was thinking.
All right.
Okay, fine.
Gee,
As long as you think that's a high number, that we don't go back and ask for
Well,
money.
needless to say, that would be on site, so there's no property purchase or anything else. How can you not do it? Put radiant heat in a slab, something simple. Just do it.
Agreed.
Why not put those big old gas things in?
Because they suck gas out of the ground big time and use it fast.
Well, there's a lot of discussion that'll take place, I'm sure, if this passes, as to what to do with the maintenance facility.
I'm sure. I mean, this is just, really like to use it.
I'm not saying
Conceptual.
Conceptual.
Okay. There's two things with it. Our presentation to the Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and Board of Education is scheduled for the 29th of February. And we need to discuss how that's going to work out. I had a little bit of a conversation with David, and I'll start the process off by saying, or kind of giving a brief description of how it might work, and then we can discuss it from there. Probably begin the meeting with myself introducing David and Bob Lynn, or from Gilbane will be there to give a cost estimate and give a brief history of our committee, where we started and how we got to where we are now. Following that, David will take the floor and go over, actually, we have to discuss this, whether David will go next or talk to Jack Cross about also talking at that time about the educational benefits that the new school would provide. Jack could go after me, or he could go after David. David would follow with his plans. Gilbane would follow with the cost estimate. And then I think somebody from our committee should talk after that about the reasons why we as a committee feel like this is the best thing to do. So having said that, I'll shut up and let you guys talk a little bit about it.
I would imagine part of the presentation would involve some of the reasons why we wanted to do this to begin with, right?
You're going to be the one presenting it.
It would be the summary. Yeah, it would be the summary. So, I mean, wouldn't,
I would think at the end.
just kind of something, not necessarily, just kind of wrap it up.
I think we have to give a passionate plea and explain to them how we all feel like this is the best plan for the town. And state the reasons why we feel that way.
I think Jeff is the perfect guy to do that.
David, you want to talk a little bit about what you
So I prepared something kind of consistent with what you just said. I'll send this around. Split this in half. So, but before we launch into this, let me just understand, because different municipalities handle this in different ways, and there will be different presentations. The first one in order is February 29th, which would be this joint meeting of Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, and I just want to be clear on the duration that you all anticipate for this. So we've got, right now, with the scenario that Jerry just described, Jerry speaking, Jack speaking, I'm speaking, Bob Lynn, and then perhaps one or more of you from the committee. You know, that will take some time. And so, does anybody, and those of you who have experience on those boards can tell us better, what do you think the duration of this whole presentation beginning to end should be? What point are we losing folks?
35 to 40 minutes max.
Okay, so that's a challenge with what's outlined here. And the person who's likely to gab on the most is me.
Yeah.
So.
Jack Cross is on this list.
Might have a run for your money
So,
there.
so that's helpful for me to know. And if we really put some time on it, I can carry on, but if you tell me what my time frame, I can also stick to my scripted time frame if I know what it should be.
I was almost thinking that it would take at least an hour to get this accomplished.
So at the initial presentation to the committee, when we first showed this, I think I spoke for more than an hour. And I asked Jerry, I said, gee, did I drone on too much? And most of the reaction I got at the time was, no, that was appropriate. But I need to pare that all down here. So, because there are lots of other folks that need to speak. So maybe keep that in mind, and we can talk a little bit further and revisit that. But there is that meeting, and then there are subsequent presentations to the town, and those I can imagine being a little bit more substantive. Are there other matters on the agenda that will be considered on the 29th, or is this strictly for the school?
It's strictly the school.
Okay.
It's a joint meeting of all the boards,
Yeah.
and this is their first time listening to what we've been working on. They won't act at that meeting, and it won't be a public meeting. The public won't be asking questions, but the board members will have the opportunity to ask questions at that time.
Right.
And there will be some, so that's why I think 35, 40 minutes,
Yeah.
because you'll get into detail addressing questions where necessary.
Okay. So I've got it starting out with Jerry, and then, and there's perhaps different arguments to be made for Jack coming before or after me. I made my case to Jerry that he might go before us, on the theory that Jack can speak to what precipitated this whole exercise. What's deficient about the present Morgan school, and why is the school system having a difficult time exercising their curricular objectives in that facility. So Jack can really speak, I think, with the greatest authority to why we need this new school, and then I would follow up and talk about the nature of this new school. If we do it the other way around, my concern is that I'm sitting there describing a wonderful new school, and we have people in our audience who are going, well, this is all wonderful, but why do we need a new school? What's wrong with what we have now? So I think you want to address that kind of up front. So transitioning into us, and I think it does make sense. We will have some visual images of the existing school, mostly, not maybe a couple photographs, but primarily some plan things, just to kind of use as a roadmap for identifying certain issues that I think should be highlighted here. There are a few bullet points on my list, both with regard to the existing school and the new school, which probably, I'm not the best equipped to speak about, or can't speak with the greatest credibility. So, looking at this list, existing building, existing site deficiencies, oversized for enrollment, inefficient and costly to operate, majority of facilities housed in 40 to 60-year-old construction, et cetera, et cetera. I think I'm well equipped to speak to those issues. As you get further down on the list, and maybe most importantly, is that precludes best use of the valuable retail site. So that may be something that others want to touch on, either Jerry in your introduction or members of the building committee as a closing thing here. It's probably not appropriate for me to spend any time talking about. And then, I'll probably spend, let's say that if I spoke for 20 minutes, I would spend 5 at most on the existing building, the balance of the time on the new building. And we'll have, in terms of the sequence, there'll be, we'll start with a site plan, transition to the floor plans, look briefly at a building section, won't spend much time on that at all, go then to the elevations, and then the 3-dimensional renderings. And there are 2 renderings in the mix at the moment. One is a kind of eye-level view looking as you would approach the school from Turnworth Turnpike, and the other is kind of an aerial view of the site, which encompasses the whole thing. So, but first we'll give you a feel for what it will actually look like to approach the building, and the other will give you a sense of the overall complex. By the way, I'll mention, we're working through this process about a year behind Guilford, and there was a development on that the other day. They, of course, went through a similar concept design process, hired an architect at a substantially greater fee, I might point out, to go through the pre-referendum effort. As you know, it was unsuccessful and then successful. They went through an interview process, hired the architect, and are now back to reevaluating concept plans. And if you go on the Guilford High School website, you'll see links to the various options that are out there at the moment. And I would suggest to you that they're wonderful and very effective images, very colorful, very punchy. I would suggest, and it's not a commentary on their process or about the architect at all, who I have great respect for, but they're quite a bit more diagrammatic. In fact, there's nothing in there that will tell you what that building looks like. They're what are called axonometric drawings, so they're kind of blocky, and they give you a sense of roughly massing, but you have no sense of what the building looked like from that. And in terms of the level of detail that we've gotten into, understanding classrooms and specific nature of how the whole thing is organized, the furniture and all. So we've gone way far on that. Our drawings aren't quite as punchy, but substantively, we have just a ton of information about this school. So our job is to somehow capture that in the images that you're going to see in this next presentation. But I feel very confident about what we have from the substantive point of view. So then, and I would defer to Bob, and Bob will just simply talk about the bottom line number here. And Bob and I haven't gotten into this in detail, but we've done this together in the past, and I know he'll have great aversion to getting into a lot of detail and trying to defend individual line items. And he'll want to speak in the most general sense possible. But he'll want to, at the same time, demonstrate to your board that there's just been a lot of homework that has gone into this number, and it's all available to be seen. It's just that it would be, we could spend all night going through all the details of that. And finally turn it over to you, whoever you think is appropriate.
I think if there was a comment from Jack or whoever's representing education to the effect that what you called the substantive point of view a minute ago would be good. You know, assuming you're totally and wholly on board with this, say it right off the bat. Say, you know what, we have gone to great lengths with the architects and engineers and everybody else, making something that works that we like. You gotta say that somewhere.
So,
About how long do you think, Bob?
my guess is for him to speak 5 minutes, for him to answer questions.
But
The
it's the
sky's the
speaking
limit.
part. I mean, my feeling is as concise as possible in the presentation and allow more time for the questions afterwards. I'm sure attention span is
Yeah, no, I think Bob is going to want to talk about $64 million or whatever that is, and he's going to want to touch on what it includes and give people assurances that we've covered those bases. I don't think he'll go through the estimate on a line item basis, and throw it open to questions.
It might be worthwhile if he can perhaps update his numbers, if memory serves, based on 2 years ago and fuel prices. He was suggesting the new structure would save $150K a year. I would venture to say that's well over $200,000 a year today. So maybe if we can get him to up some of his numbers to current prices and comparisons. We know at the time we didn't even have a conceptual school. We just had a block. So maybe based on at least conceptual ideas of design, he can firm up that a little and see where they come in. It's a big factor. And we will be addressing the Board of Finance that does like to hear a little something about saving money.
And by the way, you'll see here, in most of my bullet points, I'm not dwelling so much on the educational features of the building. You all might tell me that that's not appropriate here. I'm assuming that your boards have put faith in their Board of Education and Building Committee and other folks who are safeguarding and watching over those set of concerns. But their concern are going to be fiscal ones and understanding first costs, long-term costs, maintenance issues. So most of my bullet points, as you see here, have less to do with selling people on it being a wonderful school. I think that's going to be real important when presenting to the public, or to your board. I mean, we want to demonstrate that, and hopefully that'll come across. But I want to be certain we've addressed all their questions just about the fundamental fiscal wisdom of going this route.
I worked out a little scenario that I wanted to run by. I don't know if this is an appropriate time to go over it, but I think one of us should probably talk about this in regard to the cost to the school. And there's something called, we'll recommended if we don't do nothing approach to the school. I just wanted to run some numbers by you guys and see, and I think maybe David might be a good one to latch onto this and maybe talk to the Board of Finance about this. We're talking about a $64 million school. Bob Lynn just gave us the exact reimbursement that the state will offer, and that's 36%. So if we take $23 million off of that price, it nets us down to $41 million for the school. Now, we will sell the property that the existing school is on now. We've got a appraised value of $5.5 million on that school. You know, what it will sell for in 3 years is, you know, not anybody's guess. I mean, we can get a realtor to come in and give us a little better idea, but I said $5 million. So if we take $5 million off of that price, you get down to $36 million. Willie's not here, but he did some figuring. He was talking to the assessor and the tax collector, and that piece of property, when you figure the property value and then a building, there he is.
Good
He shall show.
What time, are we talking about septic systems?
No.
Because I just heard the whole thing about septic systems.
We're done. So anyway, he figured it out that you're probably gonna realize about $500,000 a year in tax revenue from that property. Now, I figured that over a 20-year period, because that's, the bonding is gonna be over 20 years.
But you're not gonna get that right away.
No, it's gonna be the first couple of years out or something. But anyway, just for
development costs.
I put $10 million down for that. Now, over the course of 20 years, the taxes are gonna go up on that too. Probably, unless you can stay on that slip and keep taxes down for the next 20 years.
The only taxes you're getting on is the land, so the $5 million.
For the first couple of years, but then each year after that, the $500,000 is gonna go up. So anyway, if we take $10 million off of the 36, you're down to $26 million. If there's a do-nothing approach, what you have to do is put a roof on the building. All right, that's, so if you figure about $3 million after state reimbursement for putting a roof on the building, you take that off and you get down to $23 million. And then energy savings, David was just talking about, and I went over that with Jack. If you figure about $150,000 a year in energy savings, over the next 20 years, that comes to about $3 million as well. So you're down to about $20 million for a brand new school.
And
Boy, how the hell do you do that?
So do you want to revisit that?
Well,
Good.
that's
You could
why-
talk a dog off the meat leg.
That's why I have Sub-Zero refrigerators in the house.
Well, that's why I'm bringing it up at this committee meeting right here. I mean, think about it, but I mean, those are all numbers that are close to legit.
Yeah, everything Jerry just said is the reason we made this decision.
Well, that's what I'm talking
I mean,
about.
like, every single one of those things though,
I think you've left out,
Well,
What if you did
other things-
renovate the new, say Jerry, the same way as you did those numbers?
Well, you can't do those numbers completely because you're not gonna get the sale of the property, you're not gonna get property tax revenue. You have to have a new
You're also
roof.
not buying a piece of property.
Right, but I mean, if we did complete renovate as new.
So, I'm gonna tell you, someone asked me last night from the Board of Finance and said that they're gonna ask the question of what it would cost to renovate to new to 125,000 square feet. To what the size of the new school is,
Yeah.
what is the comparison price?
Well, that would probably come close to option C4, renovate like new with some down.
What's the square footage in that
And that one is 125. And, I don't know, it came to Clinton's share of $23 million.
Is that with the 44% reimbursement?
What was the
It was
reimbursement on?
44.5,
one?
right?
It's 44.
44, so the reimbursement would be a little higher, it would be 46, that's what it
Okay,
is.
no, I'm just telling you, because someone said they're definitely gonna want to
You know that
ask
question.
that comparison.
Alright, well, that's, now, again,
That's not with escalated costs.
right, that's an older, that's the estimate that we had in the Gilbane report, so that's what they gave us, $23 million. So, and remember, I mean, John wasn't here at the time, Peggy wasn't here at the time, but we did have lengthy discussions about that option and came to the conclusion that that would not be workable educationally to eliminate that much square footage from the school. Because again, we wouldn't be able to eliminate the square footage in the auditorium, we wouldn't be able to eliminate the gym square footage, which are the two largest portions of the building. Most of the square footage would have to come out of classroom space, and that would leave the school that we don't have enough classroom space for at $125,000.
I see your report from last. I just wanted to just
Longer
remind
construction
myself what
period.
C4
Well,
is.
no, that's a whole nother thing too. That's gonna be something that you would phase in over a 2 or 3 year
So it's a
plan.
3-year construction.
That would
whereas
be
we're presenting-
huge disruption to classrooms in that school, because when you renovate as new, you basically gut the building. Right? All new plumbing, all new electrical.
Use of athletic
Anything that doesn't
fields
have a use,
or
you'd be using your athletic fields to stage construction, possibly put portable classrooms out there, or else kids are gonna be having classes in gymnasiums and auditoriums. So it's, there are so many negative aspects.
So it's potential that there could be one kid that goes through high school the entire time. because then it would be renovated.
And the high school will be renovated for this whole high school education.
You don't have the revenue.
So you wanna make the assumption that nobody's heard,
You gotta look at the.
nobody heard our first presentation, and kind of revisit all the pitfalls of renovation, that means, you wanna take a portion of the
Well,
presentation.
yeah, how much time do we want to spend?
One slide.
That's the thing.
I think it's worthy.
When should that be done? At the beginning of the presentation?
Yeah, what I would do to make that an apples to apples comparison, however, and even then it won't be, it shouldn't be 125, it should be 135, which is what our new
That's what our
budget is. We just don't have
current
that
budget is.
variation rate. But if we can interpolate that number, because I'm just looking back at what C4 was, again, we just didn't have the benefit of all the work that's been done over the past year to understand what your real program needs are. And I'd be concerned about saying a 125,000 square foot renovated building with all of its inefficiencies is in any way comparable to 135,000 square foot.
Brand new building.
It's just not going to be.
If you were to compare it, it's in a sort of a matrix that said, you know, all the benefits that you're getting from a new building versus all the benefits that you're getting from renovated as new, I think it would be pretty clear, right? So I think that you could illustrate that graphically.
And I think that number of 23 million is a hard number, whereas with the new structure, we're looking at soft numbers with the, how many millions in contingencies and related factors?
No, I think
I think that
the numbers in the master plan, whether the contingencies are all the same, I can't say exactly, but those were project costs. Those
I
were.
would think the new is a harder number than the remodel.
You're gonna have a higher contingency on a remodel.
Well, that's my point, is, you know, we've left a great deal for contingency in the new, which hopefully we'll spend none of, if not little of. With the remodel, I would think you'd have to have a huge contingency.
You know,
Mitigation of hazardous
Berlin's going through it
materials.
now, they're doing renovated as new, and it's $15 million over budget.
There you go.
Berlin.
And then I think,
I would give Bob an opportunity to revisit that number for just those reasons.
Pandora's box.
Will he be willing to do that?
yeah, you will.
He's not gonna do another estimate, but he'll look at that number
We'll
and,
look at some of it.
and
I mean, it would be nice if he spoke about the things that he told us 2 years ago, which were, you start peeling that thing apart, it's very difficult to put an estimate on it, and that the margin of error gets very large. I mean, that, and we always talk about that kind of after the meeting, oh, you know, the phasing, this, you know, the escalation for that is insane, but we never really talk about it very clearly to the public. And I think this is our opportunity to do that. So if maybe he could speak about that. Because that's one of that's the focal point of what this decision was based on, the terrifying nature of remodeling that building.
So if we feel that's an important point to get across in this meeting with the boards, when do you want to present that information?
You gotta start out with it like you did the last meeting.
In your talk, I think that should come right from when you're saying the history of what this
Yeah, all right,
committee's
yeah.
been through.
Yeah,
Go back to what you did last year. This is where we started, this is how we've evolved, and this is where we are now. Dave can show us the station wagon again.
We can do that at the end of the,
I think I'd go first, being because I'm gonna be sitting in a different seat. I would rather know right away why we decided to go to new and then show what.
Right, that's the way you premise it. This is where we started, this is how we've come through it, and we looked at these options, and the reason now that we're coming to
That's all we're gonna
you.
be thinking about
That's right.
till the end. It's like, well, why'd you do this?
That's
Well,
right.
it's
Same
like,
as you did
well,
the
tell them right
last
off
one,
the
that's how you
bat.
started the last presentation.
as long as you don't think they're gonna sit there and say, you already told us this week, you know?
No, and I've already got told, and I'm still gonna be there. and I'm sorry.
All right, fine.
alright.
Good.
So basically, the presentation that we made about the Gilbane report, the first part of it anyway, we wanna sort of duplicate that, but shorten it up a little bit. And then after that, Jack will talk about the educational reasons why we think it was better than the existing facility. Alright? Okay. David?
You had more numbers you were gonna throw out for comparison?
Well, no, I took $3 million off for energy savings over the course of the 20 years, and then you get down to 20 million.
How many $1 million on average do we spend at the existing Morgan High School year to year?
Well,
New boilers, new stuff, anybody got a ballpark?
How much have we spent?
Well, on an average year, look the last 10, average year, how many million
Did
do
we
we
do the
spend a
last
year?
5 a while back? We just do the energy, we
Upgrades,
just
new
did the energy.
windows, new boilers, I know we spent $5 million there in the last.
We've done the auditorium for 200 grand, and we spent $2 million on the roof for the, 1.5.
No, he's asking, what are we gonna have to fix between
Well,
now?
no,
What we've been spending prior to this.
Right, you
Already.
get your basis, if you figure out what you spent the last 10
$1.5
years. you
million on
figure
the
out what
auditorium
you
roof. The window project was what, 1.2 million, Jack?
Yes.
So we're spending $1
Boilers
million
are
a
1.2
year
million.
on Morgan High School.
Wow, yeah.
So basically, it's free, Jerry.
I didn't want to get this there yet.
Well, I mean, the truth is, it's likely, I mean, ask the art, is it likely we're still gonna spend $1 million a year on that school for maintenance and upgrade of, as we have
I
for
don't
the
know what
last
the numbers
10
are, but you're gonna spend less than you are in the.
Well, we know
existing
that,
school, right?
but
So,
part of our point is, you know, here,
We're gonna
because
speculate
of
what the
the
numbers
age
are.
of the school, you know, traditionally, we have spent this on the school, and that's money we likely won't be spending. Of course, there's a maintenance fee for maintaining the new school, but nowhere near comparatively what the old.
And this estimate now includes 70% of the roof being a standing seam metal roof, and the 20-year cyclical cycle and accelerated sometimes before that, you know, membrane roof repairs and replacement is just not in the mix for 50 years.
That was one of the other things I was gonna add, is that at the end of the 20 years, in other words, we replaced the Morgan roof now, had $3 million in for that. In 20 years, you're gonna be looking at replacing that roof again, and with escalations, and I figured about 4 to 5%, you're looking at $9 million in 20 years to replace that roof.
Well, not to mention unknowns, I mean, some.
Well, and then along the way, there's other things in that school, so the do-nothing approach costs us a lot of money over the next 20 years.
Need to subtract out the transportation of the complex too.
It's called jockeying.
Cross country.
Plus, money's cheap. Right now,
Money's
just
very
say.
cheap.
Not that, either way, I mean, if you.
It's on my way.
But it is, but that's one of the things you did not include, I don't think, is bonding costs. Or interest over the year. You know, to be fair, you've gotta put that in.
Yeah, it's not around
But
divided by
anyway,
20 number.
it's just, yeah,
You're at an interest, if it's 20 million over 20 years, you're probably gonna be paying $1.3 million over 20 years versus 1 million. You're gonna have because of the interest.
I'm both.
That's a round number of 3%. I mean, you know.
Well, those people on the Board of Finance will figure that out if we don't include it, so. Right then.
Kevin worked that out already.
Oh, you'd be surprised the people that have got the questions.
Well, that's
Fortunately for
good.
you, I won't be there, but.
That's good that they ask them. Because
Yeah, right.
It's important to get the questions out.
Well, yes, and that's their feeling, is that they're gonna ask the questions that ultimately they think that the public would probably ask later. And so it's best to get those answers.
Be prepared for it.
Yes, is exactly right.
But, I mean, the point of my little illustration here, and granted, it's not perfect, and there's some things that were left out, but there's some other things that we're gonna be doing with Morgan School that are left out as well. It makes, it takes 64 million down to a palatable number. And Dennis likes that number too, he's smiling down there.
Oh, yeah. You're in the wrong business.
No, he isn't.
I gotta go in and try to buy a TV from tomorrow and use the same strategy on him. Well, this, and this, that $700 TV, yeah, it's only 150.
Dennis, you'll walk out with a free TV that'll only cost you $1,000.
There you go. You should be a car salesman.
Oh my God. Alright. So, we got the first part of the presentation. Jack, you're all set? You know what you're gonna do, right?
Sure.
You have your marching orders. At the end of the presentation, we have to go over again why we feel it's important to do the school, and who, would anybody like to volunteer to speak at that time? Thank you, David.
You, wait a minute, if I got to do the numbers thing, you gotta do that.
I'd be willing to do it.
Just be short,
You sure?
be short.
Concise?
That's the main thing.
Did anybody take a look at Pete's bullet points that he sent us the other day? Yeah?
And then we're gonna have a question and answer period after that, so are they gonna be able to ask questions throughout the whole thing?
Members of, no, not during the whole thing. I think we'll ask them to hold their questions until our presentation is completed.
Why, you don't think they'll do it after each speaker?
No, I think we should, well, I don't know, I think we should present our presentation, get through it, and then
That's probably the
questions
best way to
can
go.
go afterwards. Yeah,
Because you're gonna get a lot of information.
That makes sense.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. Well, let's get our presentation over with, and then we can answer
I think that you did the original time, right? That went very well. The time in the town hall downstairs in the auditorium.
Yeah, and
Where is this taking place?
Hmm?
Where will this be?
I think green room, the green room downstairs. I don't think it needs to be a bigger, it isn't for the public to come to, this is a presentation. I mean, it's open to the public, but it's a presentation to the boards. So there's gonna be 20 members, 20 board members there.
Board members, not,
Right, yeah.
We'll do a horseshoe shaped table like we do with the Board of Ed budget presentation, Board of Finance, Board of Ed, and we sit together and then you guys present and public is sitting in the audience.
Right. Will yours be a PowerPoint presentation, David? Yeah.
So we lose that little slide at the bus stop.
Oh, I won't have any of that stuff. No, it'll just be just school.
And the flower pot.
And the flower pot.
The flower pot. That's the one you like.
If you got one of a real school with the flowers on the roof, great, but don't put the bus.
I could do that too, but I don't think I want to put anything.
Okay.
So, can we have you throw some slides in for my introduction part of the presentation? You can have some stuff in at the end to support it, and then I think Jackie wanted to do some PowerPoint stuff too.
I'm talking points, okay.
Our talking points, right?
He's the guy you gotta worry about the time, make sure he's.
We've already told, we've already told them, we're gonna have a little
We covered that.
hourglass there. A little egg warmer. Flip it over.
I got my little clock in here.
I would ask if you get your slides to us.
Sir, there you go.
Middle of next week.
Next week, we're gonna
Thanks, Will.
get that stuff to
It
you.
turns out I have jury duty on me.
Great.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
this is my third excuse. They're sick of hearing from me. I can't go.
So tell me again, I didn't hear the time when you'd like these, the information for this one.
Middle of next week? Thursday or something.
We're good? Dennis is-
Yeah, I think that's, you've got the plans.
Is everybody all set with that? Have we got a rough plan? We'll meet again next Wednesday, we'll go over it in some more detail. Unless there's any other business that we'd like to conduct in public, I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss real estate. Do you want to go over bullet points for that? We don't have to.
Okay, we can do it next meeting. You meet next Wednesday.
We have a meeting on Wednesday.
Yeah, keep that, and then I'll compile them, if you guys send them to me.
Yeah, I mean,
You know, and the thing is, the only thing about that is that I tried not to be subjective, right? I mean, everything was, it wasn't, you know, learning environment, it makes kids feel better, you know, things like that. You know, they have to be more or less complete rock solid facts at this point.
Right.
You know, there are a lot of emotional things that are tied to it, pride and things like that. You can leave that for category 7, but that's, you know, this is a business decision.
I think we want to, at the end
No, at
of our
some point,
meeting, I think we want to go over
No,
some
at
of the
some
emotional
point, no,
reasons.
I understand that, but for now, I mean, let's just, we're trying to rehash what we talked about for 2 years and make sure the public understands what we've been through. And if they've been through what we've been through, they'll see it pretty clearly.
Are you going to be here next Wednesday?
I love it.
Or you can conference call.
Skype them.
So you're going to be
Sal's
away,
turning 40.
you're going to be away for a week?
Gee, you
Or
have
is
to
it
announce
just,
that in public.
Yeah.
the whole week you're going to
Did
be
you get that
away
on
for-
camera?
Get in the minutes.
Happy
That was
birthday,
good.
Val. Maybe we should sing happy birthday to her.
Sure.
Yeah, it's on camera too.
Married an older woman.
I did. Smarter, older.
they're all smarter. She knows that.
So anyway, send those to me.
It's just a flip of the calendar, my friend. I've done it for 71 years, don't worry about it.
We're good? Okay. Why don't we invite, for a motion to go into executive session, and maybe we invite Jack, and we don't need to go. Okay, Jack, Willie, or Willie. You need to be in here, you're not.
It's up to you.
No, I don't think you need to be.